let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. When was the last time you drove 2, 3, maybe 4 hours to visit your children and actually felt wanted when you got there? Not tolerated. Not squeezed in between their errands and their kids' soccer practice. But truly, genuinely wanted. If you had to think about it, that tells you everything. I've spent over 40 years as a family psychologist, sitting across from thousands of parents, many of them your age, who all told me the same thing. I keep showing up, but I don't think they really care if I'm there or not. And every time I hear that, my heart breaks a little. Because I know what's really going on. It's not that your children are bad people. Most of them aren't. It's that somewhere along the way, the relationship lost its balance. You became the one who always calls, always drives, always adjusts your schedule, always swallows your feelings to keep the peace. And they got used to it. Today, I'm going to share something I wish every senior in America knew sooner: the 7 things your adult children need to do before you make your next visit. Now, let me be very clear right from the start. This is not about punishing your children. This is not about playing games or withholding love. This is about self-respect. This is about teaching the people you love most in this world that you matter. Not just as a grandparent, not just as a babysitter, not just as someone who shows up with casseroles, but as a human being who deserves to be valued. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Before I give you the 7 things, I need to explain why this happens in the first place. Because once you understand the psychology behind it, you'll never see your family visits the same way again. Here's the pattern I've seen in my practice for over 4 decades. When your children were young, you were the center of their world. They needed you for everything. But as they grew up, got married, built their own families, the dynamic shifted. And that's natural. That's healthy. Children are supposed to become independent. But here's what's not healthy. When independence turns into indifference. When your child stops seeing you as someone worth making effort for. And here's the painful part. Most of the time, we are the ones who train them to treat us this way. I know that's hard to hear. But stay with me. Every time you called and they didn't call back, and you called again, you taught them that your time doesn't matter. Every time you drove 3 hours and they didn't even clear a space for you to sleep, and you said nothing, you taught them that your comfort doesn't matter. Every time you spent the entire visit cooking, cleaning, and babysitting while they scrolled through their phones, and you smiled through it, you taught them that you're there to serve, not to be served. I'm not blaming you. You did it out of love. You did it because you were afraid. Afraid that if you spoke up, you'd lose them. Afraid that setting a boundary means losing a relationship. But I need to tell you the truth. As someone who has sat with families in crisis for over 40 years, when you don't set expectations, you teach people that you don't matter. And the saddest part? Your children don't even realize they're doing it. They're not sitting around plotting to make you feel bad. They're just living their busy lives, and because you never asked for anything, they assumed you didn't need anything. So today we're going to change that. Here are the 7 things. Thing number 1, they need to invite you. You should not have to ask. This is number 1 for a reason. Because it sets the tone for everything else. I had a client. Let's call her Margaret. She was 74 years old. Every month, she would call her daughter and say, "Would it be okay if I came to visit this weekend?" And every month her daughter would pause, check her calendar, and say something like, "Well, Saturday is kind of busy, but I guess you could come Sunday afternoon for a few hours." Margaret told me, "I feel like I'm asking for an appointment at the dentist." And she was right. Here's what I told Margaret, and here's what I'm telling you. You are not a door-to-door salesman. You are not someone who needs to pitch yourself to get through the front door of your own child's life. You are their parent. You changed their diapers. You stayed up with them when they were sick. You worked double shifts so they could go to college. You deserve to be invited, not out of obligation, but because they want you there. So the first standard is simple. Wait for the invitation. And if it doesn't come, that's not your failure. That's information. That's a conversation that needs to happen. Thing number 2. They need to prepare a comfortable space for you. I'm not talking about a 5-star hotel room. I'm not talking about fresh flowers and chocolate on the pillow. I'm talking about basic human decency. A clean bed. A towel that isn't the dog's old blanket. A place to put your suitcase that isn't the garage floor. You'd be amazed how many seniors have told me they sleep on a broken pull-out couch, or share a room with storage boxes, or use a bathroom that hasn't been cleaned in weeks. And they say nothing. Because they don't want to be difficult. Listen to me carefully. Expecting a clean bed is not being difficult. It's being human. When your child prepares a space for you, they're sending a message. I thought about you before you got here. I made room for you. You're not an afterthought. And when they don't, that's a message too. Thing number 3. They need to spend real time with you, not just be in the same house. There's a big difference between being in the same building and being together. I've heard this story 100 times. I drove 4 hours to see them, and then I sat on the couch alone while they worked in the other room. The kids were on their iPads. My son-in-law was in the garage. My daughter ran errands all day. We had dinner together for 20 minutes, and then I drove home. That's not a visit. That's loneliness with extra steps. Here's what I recommend. Before the visit, have a simple conversation. I'd love for us to do 1 or 2 things together while I'm there. Maybe a meal, maybe a walk. Maybe we play cards like we used to. Nothing big. I just want to spend time with you. That's the whole reason I'm coming. If they can't commit to even one activity with you, even one meal without phones, then ask yourself honestly, what are you driving all that way for? Thing number 4. They need to respect your physical limits and energy. This one is personal for me because I've seen it cause real damage, not just emotional damage, but physical damage. I had a client named Richard. He was 78 years old, had 2 bad knees and a heart condition. Every time he visited his son's family, he ended up babysitting 3 grandchildren under the age of 7 for the entire weekend. His son and daughter-in-law would run a few errands that turned into 8 hours of shopping and socializing. Richard loved his grandkids, but by Sunday night, he could barely stand up. He told me, "I feel like I need a vacation from my vacation." And when I asked him why he didn't say anything, he said the words I've heard 1,000 times. I don't want them to think I'm useless. Let me say this as clearly as I can. You are a guest. You are not free childcare. You are not a housekeeper. You are not a handyman. You are allowed to say, I'd love to spend some time with the grandkids, but I need breaks. You are allowed to say, I can't do what I used to do, and that's okay. And if your children make you feel guilty for having physical limitations, that tells you something important about how they see your value. They see you as useful, not as loved. And there's a world of difference between those 2 things. Thing number 5. They need to speak to you with respect, especially in front of the grandchildren. Now we're getting into territory that a lot of seniors don't talk about, but they feel it deeply. Have you ever been corrected by your child in front of your grandchildren? Talked over at the dinner table? Told, Mom, that's not how we do things anymore. In a tone that made you feel about 2 inches tall? I see so many seniors nodding right now. Here's what I need you to understand. The way your children speak to you in front of your grandchildren is not just about you. It's about the future. Because those grandchildren are watching. They are learning. And what they're learning is, this is how you treat grandma. This is how you treat grandpa. They're old. They don't know anything. You can interrupt them. You can dismiss them. You can roll your eyes when they talk. And in 10 years, those grandchildren will treat you exactly that way. Not because they're mean, but because they learned it was acceptable. So this is not just about your feelings in the moment. This is about the legacy of respect in your family. You have every right to say, I understand things have changed since I raised you, but I need you to speak to me with respect, especially in front of the kids. Not because I'm always right, but because I'm your parent, and I deserve that. Thing number 6. They need to stop turning your visit into a to-do list. I've lost count of how many seniors have told me this. Every time I visit, they have a list. Can you fix the leaky faucet? Can you help us paint the bedroom? Can you watch the kids while we go to a wedding? Can you reorganize the pantry? And suddenly your visit isn't a visit at all. It's a free labor weekend. Now don't get me wrong. Family helps family. If your son needs help hanging a shelf and you're able and willing, that's beautiful. That's what families do. But when every visit revolves around what you can do for them, when there's always a project, always a task, always a need, that's not a relationship. That's a transaction. You're not showing up to work a shift. You're showing up to be with your family. And here's a gentle but firm way to say it. I'm happy to help with small things if I can. But I'd like this visit to be about spending time together, not about my to-do list. I came to see you, not your leaky faucet. Say it with a smile. Say it with love. But say it. Thing number 7. They need to say thank you and show you they're grateful. This is the last one, and in some ways, it's the simplest. But it's also the one that means the most. After a lifetime of sacrifice, after decades of working, providing, worrying, losing sleep, giving up your own dreams so your children could chase theirs, you deserve to hear these words. Thank you for coming, Mom. We love having you here, Dad. The kids are always happier when you're around. That's it. That's all it takes. A few words. A hug that lasts an extra second. A phone call after you leave that says, "We miss you already." But for so many seniors, those words never come. And over time, that silence becomes a wound. Not a loud wound, not something you'd talk about at a dinner party, but a quiet ache that sits in your chest every time you drive home alone. You are not asking for a parade. You are not asking for a trophy. You are asking for basic human acknowledgement, the kind that says, "I see you. I value you. My life is better because you're in it." And if your children can't give you that, then that's the most important conversation you'll ever have with them. Not an angry conversation, not an ultimatum, just an honest one. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This all sounds great, but if I say any of this, my kids will think I'm being dramatic. Or worse, they'll stop talking to me altogether. I hear you. And I understand that fear. It's real. But here's what 40 years of practice have taught me. The families that fall apart are not the ones that have hard conversations. The families that fall apart are the ones that never have them. They just slowly drift apart, full of resentment and unspoken hurt, until one day it's too late. So let me give you some words to start with. You don't have to memorize them. Just let them guide you. You could say, "I love visiting you. It's one of the highlights of my life. But I want to be honest. Sometimes I leave feeling like I wasn't really needed there. And that hurts. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying this because I want our time together to be meaningful for both of us." Or you could say, "I've been thinking a lot about our visits, and I want to make sure they're good for everyone, including me. Can we talk about what that looks like?" That's it. No accusations. No guilt trips. Just honesty. Just love. And here's what I want you to remember. And this might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. Setting a boundary is not selfish. Setting a boundary is one of the most loving things you can do. Because when you set a boundary, you're saying, "This relationship matters to me so much that I refuse to let it become hollow. I refuse to just go through the motions. I want it to be real." And if your children react badly, if they get defensive, if they say you're being unreasonable, don't panic. That reaction is not a rejection. It's a sign that they've never had to think about this before. Give them time. Let it sink in. But if months go by and nothing changes, if they still don't call, still don't invite you, still don't make any effort, then that is painful but important information. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It means the relationship has work to do. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is step back and let them feel your absence. Because sometimes people don't appreciate what they have until it's no longer there. I want to leave you with this thought. You spent 20, 30, maybe 40 years raising your children. You gave them everything, your time, your energy, your money, your sleep, your worry, your life. And you did it gladly, because that's what parents do. But you are not just a parent. You are a person. You are a human being with needs, with feelings, with dignity. And this stage of your life, these golden years, they belong to you. You don't have to earn your place at your children's table. You don't have to prove your worth by babysitting, cooking, fixing, or keeping quiet. You don't have to accept crumbs of attention and call it love. You deserve the full meal. So before your next visit, ask yourself, have they done these 7 things? Have they invited me? Have they prepared for me? Are they ready to spend real time with me? Will they respect my limits? Will they speak to me with kindness? Will they see me as a person, not a project? Will they say thank you? If the answer is yes, go. Enjoy every moment. Hug those grandkids. Make memories. But if the answer is no, then maybe it's time to have that conversation. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of love. Love for them and love for yourself. Because you, my friend, deserve to be more than just a visitor in your own family's life. Thank you for watching. If this video spoke to you, if it touched something in your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend who needs to hear this today. You are not alone in this. There are millions of seniors out there feeling exactly what you feel. And I want you to know, I see you. You matter. And you always will. Leave a comment below. Which of these 7 things hit closest to home for you? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire me more than you know. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, live strong, live proud, and never forget your worth.